Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Mobility Revolution. We're your hosts. I'm Nate Ryan,
And I'm Reese Moulton.
and today we have a special guest with us today, Mark Furguson. Mark is a dasher who tries to see both sides of it. With corporate experience in operations and supply chain and doing over 6,000 deliveries as a dasher on DoorDash, Mark has a unique perspective for the gig economy. And he runs on the show today.
Thanks very much. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today, Mark. Cool. If you want to just go ahead and kick it off by, tell us a little bit about your background, where you currently dash and, what made you decide to start dashing in the first place?
Sure. Well, first of all, welcome to my living room in San Jose, California. In 2015, I got separated and I quickly realized that if I ever wanted to live in my own place again, I would need to start earning additional money in addition to, my day job as a, sales operations and program manager. So I tried DoorDash and I enjoyed it. It's a very different experience than what I was used to with, conference calls and working in an office and, with my, cube life and things like that. There's a lot of immediate sort of feedback with, bringing people food who, always enjoy seeing you come in with dinner. And so I started to take very detailed notes of the dashes that I would go on, what day of the week would work, what hours of the day, kind of outside of my normal 40-hour-a-week job. And so I kept these notes, and over, 4.5 years now, I've completed, over 6,000, DoorDash deliveries. I've worked for other gig economy platforms as well, Caviar, Instacart, Postmates, etc. I even delivered ease, which is weed, for a while. And so I have a fair amount of experience, in the field, and then as well as I can kind of see the corporate side of it as well from my, my other experience.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again for joining us today. So, tell us a little bit about how drivers can get signed up with DoorDash and what that experience looks like for them.
Sure. Well, there's really no barriers to entry to be a dasher. You need some sort of working vehicle, but that's about it. So you can go through the DoorDash site or use a referral code from someone. You can sign up, provide your basic information, including proof of car insurance. They'll put you through a background check, and in a few days, assuming your background check is boring, they will, you'll get signed up. They'll provide you with a red card, which will allow you to, complete certain orders, which I could get into in a bit, and then, you can start dashing. It's really just that easy, and you'll probably never talk to a human being. It'll all be through, emails, texts, downloading the app to your phone, etc. So it's quite easy to start up.
Gotcha. So could you explain a little bit more to people who aren't so familiar with the red card? You mentioned that they give you a red card when you sign up. Can you touch on that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, they give you a red card because there's typically, when you pick up an order, and I can go through the order process if you'd like, but typically when you pick up an order, the restaurant already has a relationship with DoorDash so that, all of their orders are going to be paid for through, accounts receivable, accounts payable, et cetera. But there's some circumstances, for instance, when you go through a drive-through at Wendy's or Jack in the Box, where you simply go through as your own customer. The restaurant doesn't know whether you're driving for DoorDash or, for yourself, and they don't care. And you can simply pay and use your DoorDash red card as, your credit card. So you don't have to pay out of pocket and then get reimbursed. Those cards are only active, for the locations and for the amounts that, you buy that particular order. So you can't go out, and get yourself, something on the way.
Got it.
As far as, sorry to move forward, but
no problem. Yeah.
So, when you become a dasher, and people who drive for DoorDash are known as dashers. we are independent contractors. We're not W-2. So with that, I can work as often as I want or as little as I want. And it's simply based on the availability in your location. When you have, when you look through your app, you can look at, your local area, and there's a few regions within your city, and it'll show you if there's availability to sign up immediately, or you can schedule yourself to ensure that you'll have a spot to dash at a certain time. And when you are paid, you're not paid on an hourly basis. You're only paid on the basis of completed orders. So, so if you sign up and you sit in your car for a couple of hours and you just don't receive any orders on a particular day, you're going to drive home with having made $0. Conversely, if you're really busy and you're stacking up a lot of orders, you can do a pretty good job, or you can make a lot of money on a particular day.
Hey, Mark. So I want to kind of, while we're talking about orders, we've heard a lot from our customers, and even just from me ordering delivery during this time, there's a lot of people who are picking up orders for the very, very first time.
Mm-hmm.
What are some common things you've seen or you've gone through on your first few orders, of maybe some issues, or like the actual, like, how do you walk through as a first-time person going into a restaurant, picking up an order and overcoming maybe some of the obstacles that maybe the order's not ready yet, and so on and so forth?
Sure. So when you sign up and the first time you receive an order, an assignment will come through your phone, and this assignment will show you the restaurant that you're going to go to, how many items are in the order, the customer's name, and then ultimately, the number of miles it's going to take to drive, both to the restaurant and to the customer, as well as the minimum amount you're going to be paid. You might end up earning more than what's initially noted, but it'll show you, at the very least, how much you'll make on a particular order, which does vary by tip amount and by, sort of the distance or the amount of challenge to a particular order. So
Okay.
when you receive this assignment, you have approximately 45 to 60 seconds to either accept the order and then move forward, or you can decline it and then you remain idle until, you pick up the next one. Typically, how you decide if you're going to accept or decline an order is if you feel it's worth your time. And again, the payouts on certain orders are, they can vary quite a bit. And if you have a little bit of experience, you can kind of figure out, okay, it's, the total amount is 4 miles and I'm going to a restaurant that I'm familiar with. So, and I think it's going to take me about a half hour to complete it. And so if this order is going to pay out $10, I'm trying to earn, $20 an hour gross, then, I'll take it. But there are times when, the payout on a particular order is noticeably bad. And so you decline it and you kind of go back into the pool of the next order.
Mm-hmm.
So
real quick on that.
Yeah.
When is an order worth declining and when is it worth accepting?
Right. So, again, when I'm dashing, I typically determine if I'm having a good day or a bad day. And this does matter a little bit. It's kind of like housing. All of the markets are sort of individualized. So,
right.
Here in Silicon Valley and in the San Jose area, I want to make $20 an hour gross on, when I'm out. So if I look at an order and I can determine, if an order is going to pay out, $10, again, with all of the dashes that I've done, I can kind of figure it out that, okay, I think this $10 order is going to take me about a half hour. And so I'll take it. And there's, other orders that are very obviously a lot more lucrative than that. And then there's other orders that aren't going to pay out very well at all. And it's kind of a waste of time. And so I will decline it and, wait for the next one to come through. And it's, again, as you gain more experience, you can kind of figure out hey, it's a really slow day, I'm going to take just about anything, or, it's a really busy night and I'm not going to take this, $3 or $4 order because I feel that 30 seconds from now, I'm going to get a new assignment and it's going to pay, $12. So there's always that continual sort of fluctuation in what you think that, if you're going to have if it's going to be an acceptable order or not.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you factor in like canceled orders into earning potential? And because earlier you mentioned that like if you receive 0 orders, you're going to go home with $0. How are canceled orders factored into earning potential for Dashers?
Yeah, well, I mentioned, sitting for 2 hours and not making any money. That's a very rare occasion, and DoorDash over the years has had the technology and the ability and the experience to really allow the supply of Dashers plus the demand of orders to, get pretty close, and they've done they've improved, greatly over that. So there's rarely a case when you're sitting there for, a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, not doing anything. It's just, it just doesn't happen, very often. So, again, Dashers can kind of get a sense of, if an order is going to be worth it or not. And it's tough if you've sat there for 20 minutes and you haven't received anything. You're more likely to take the $4 or the $5 order because, you're just sitting there and you want to get moving. That doesn't happen very often, and, more often than not. And of course, I don't dash 40 hours a week. I typically dash, on a Sunday evening, or, currently at a, weekday lunch or a dinner during normal times anyway. And so, I'll get orders pretty consistently. And, as soon as I finish an order, within 30 seconds, I'll get another one. And they typically I accept about, 60 to 75% of my, of the assignments that come through.
Nice. And so you mentioned that, there are slow periods. And I know you right now are exclusively doing DoorDash. You're taking a little break right now due to the coronavirus outbreak and pandemic that's happening. But if you're experiencing a slow time, can you manage working across multiple platforms or multiple delivery services? And are there any apps out there that can help drivers kind of navigate orders across multiple platforms?
There are people who do it. And in fact, I've seen Dashers out there who are somehow managing 2 separate DoorDash accounts concurrently, but similar to someone who's working Uber and Lyft at the same time. There are Dashers out there. I don't think it's quite as common, but there are Dashers who are also doing UberEats or Postmates or GrubHub, at the same time to pick up, just to have more opportunities to make money. In the times that I've dashed, again, when I'm going 15 or 20 hours a week, it's easier for me to work during times that I know are busy. Again, weekday lunches, dinners, during other high volume times that maybe we can talk about. But, I typically can, make the amount of money that I want, that I expect, working exclusively through DoorDash. But there are people who multitask like that, often. Mm-hmm. It's just maybe a little above my abilities.
Awesome. And so, going into DoorDash, there's 2 questions that I have for you. One is, what's your advice for people when they accept an order, such as going into things like, how do you park? Where do you park? I know being in Silicon Valley, parking is extremely tough there sometimes, and same with here in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. But then also, are there different kinds of facilities or restaurants that you prefer picking up at, such as like, do you prefer a restaurant that's inside a mall or compared to a basic storefront kind of thing?
Yeah. So For if someone is going to start dashing, one bit of advice. I'll talk about the parking and stuff in a moment, but you know, first of all food delivery companies, they're pretty similar. They're all app based. They um, how much you can earn actually can fluctuate between different markets. DoorDash has been clearly the winner for me, here in San Jose. But if you're in LA, as I understand, Postmates is somewhat more popular. And if you're in other markets around the country, it might be GrubHub or UberEats or something that works out best for you. So just because I'm always a dasher and that's what I chose, it's not necessarily what's going to work, for someone who is new to a food delivery platform. So that said, the first advice that I would give to anyone who's going to do food delivery or any delivery is to buy one of those window mount things for your phone, because you might not think about this now, but if you're constantly looking at your phone for assignments, for directions, etc., you want that right there, just so you can just dart your eyes to the side, so that you can remain safe on the road, which of course is number one priority. That said, I also would suggest that you try a couple of different regions out once you choose your platform, and it's good to get familiar with a region and just keep dashing there, keep postmatesing there, because you become familiar with the area. Many of the restaurants are going to be repeaters, and so you can find that lesser known street to park on. You can the times of the day when they're going to be busy, or if it's going to be a real bear to go to try to get to a certain place or not. Certainly, as you bring that up, Nate, it just recalls to me that going inside a shopping mall is always a mess because they're crowded. And then
imagine,
you want to stay, you want to go into, a standalone restaurant that, just has some familiarity to, going to a mall or to, the old town, section can be challenging because parking is limited. However, I do like going to, I tend to like going to, sort of upper echelon restaurants, because when you're going to a place like a nice fish place or to a steak place, you're going to tend to receive, you may, certainly it's someone who has more money who's buying that, as opposed to picking up from Taco Bell, or, just as the, if you average it all out. And so if you're going to get a large order, say the food value is $75 from a certain place, you might, there's a better chance that you're also going to get a nicer tip on top of that, because someone, if someone tips, just say 10%, on an order that costs, $75, you're going to earn your base pay from DoorDash, and then, an additional $7.50. And, that effort to park, to walk into the restaurant, hopefully it's ready, all things being equal, pick it up and drive it. It's essentially the same effort as if, you have to sit in the drive-through at Taco Bell and, pick up, $6 worth of, bean and cheese burrito and drive it somewhere else. And, if someone gets Taco Bell and pays $6 for it, it's really unlikely that they're going to add a big tip on top of that, just because sort of the ratio of tip to food value, is really off. So nicer restaurants tend to pay off, better. And it's not a hard and fast rule, but, that's generally what you see.
Right.
Gotcha.
Awesome. And before Reese goes into our next topic, for those that are listening, keep an eye out for your local legislation, because I know here in Los Angeles, they've loosened the parking restrictions and the ticketing restrictions, specifically for delivery drivers, in order to help ease everything that's happening right now. So if you're out there delivering and you're worried about, potentially parking your car in a red space or a white space, just know that cities are loosening regulations around parking restrictions. So in order to make delivery much easier in heavily congested parking areas.
Great point. Yeah, so I guess to kind of move on to another topic, or similar from what we've already been discussing, but once you've already accepted an order and you're en route to deliver and you've arrived there, tell us a little bit about the process of parking, what you need to bring with you into the store or the restaurant. How do they identify you? What's that interaction usually like with the person working at the
Sure.
restaurant?
So first of all, it's funny, Nate, again, you were talking about parking, and as Dashers become more familiar with the restaurants they go to and, just their region or territory, you can find places where, of course, we are responsible for our own parking tickets, but we've become a lot more aware of some chances we can take in parking. Now, whether it's in a red zone or a loading zone, etc. Again, I would not advise it, and I would never ever park in a handicapped space. But there are places where you can get creative. Maybe if you're only going to be there for a few moments. If you're going to be there for 3 minutes, it's unlikely you're going to get towed if you're directly behind, a truck or something like that. So Dashers who've done it for a long time are familiar with this, and they might chuckle. So once you receive an order, obviously you drive towards the restaurant. You should bring, although it's not required, you should bring a warming bag just to maintain a little bit of professionalism, and also for the customer service, in order to, the food is likely warm. And so you also want to put it, in a safe place, as well as, keep it warm or cold, as it were. And when you walk in, restaurants are very familiar with Dashers. So, and they can, especially if you have a bag, they can see you coming. And all they need to know, from you is, what service are you coming from? Because they may have multiple services, and they need to know the name or maybe a code of who you're picking up for. So I walk in and I'll go, "Hi, I'm with DoorDash, and I have an order for Bob." And I'll go, "Okay, hold on a minute." They'll check on their order. It might be ready, already. Some places like Chipotle or some others have a rack of have some shelves over on the side, and with the names on it, because they go through so many orders that they don't want a Dasher to have to stand through line or walk straight to the register. We can just pick out the order that we have, put it in our warming bag, and go on our way back to the on our way towards the customer.
On the order, not to sidetrack you.
Sure.
What do you do as a Dasher when you show up to the restaurant and maybe the restaurant didn't get the order?
It does happen, and the system is not perfect. Although over the now that I started in 2015, I will say that DoorDash and the restaurants, and the app, they've become much more efficient in how they run orders. If there is a problem with the order, sometimes they're not ready, and so it's a matter of asking, do you have the order? How long do you expect this order to take? Because if you're going to if you need to wait for 5 minutes, you probably sit down and relax for a moment, wait for the order. But if they're really busy, sometimes they could be so busy that, hey, it's not going to be ready for, 20 or 25 minutes, to be honest. And in that case, you can cancel your order and then, try your luck, get, for a next order, and actually unassign it when you're in the middle of it, as long as you haven't picked up the order. So you just need to get an honest assessment from someone if, what the status of the order is. And if it hasn't been put in at all, which is a pretty rare occurrence, if it's something where they can, make it on site, or they can make it right away, you can wait around for them to complete the order. But if it's something like a pizza, which cannot be it can't be pre-cooked. They have to do it, they have to do it once they receive this specific order, then, you're probably going to unassign yourself from that, because you don't want to, wait for 15 minutes while they prepare and, cook a pizza. It's much easier if they don't have an order and it's, I don't know, chicken or enchiladas or something like that, where they may have made, several that are made up, or they make them quickly, and then they can just pack it up and, you can go on your way.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Gotcha. So I guess, yeah, to continue down, the process as a dasher, what does the rest of that delivery process look like after you've received the order, you've driven to the restaurant, you've picked up the actual item, and then what's the rest of the process look like as you deliver it to the customer?
Sure. So once I pick up the order, I click the slider, or I slide the slider on my app, which takes me to the next portion of my delivery. And from there, it'll tell me you're delivering to, again, I'm delivering to Bob, I guess, and it'll give me the address. And then also it'll allow me to link to a pre-chosen app, Maps app that I have. And so I use Google Maps, and, I'll click it, and it'll give me the directions, obviously, to get to Bob, my customer's house or apartment or condo. And I'll make my way over there. Now, typically before I get in my car and I start moving, I have some auto text that I have programmed into my phone, and it just goes, and it's kind of it's boilerplate, and I can text the customer and I can say, "Hi, Bob, my name is Mark. I'm the dasher assigned to your order. My ETA is, 7:25. And, I'll text it to him, and, I can start on my way. That is not required of dashers. I like to do it because I enjoy good customer service, but it's certainly not required. And so I do that. And then when I arrive to the customer, it's a very easy, if it's in a single family home, and you simply, park and walk up to typically you walk up to the door, and, they're expecting you to come. So I will simply knock on the door and provide them their food, and that's that. Sometimes it's a little more tricky with if they're in a large apartment complex, or just a sort of multi-family dwelling. Those can be challenging, but again, if you're familiar with your area, it's likely that you've delivered there before. And there's also apps that you can actually find specific apartment locations within a larger complex. So
gotcha.
Do that too.
Gotcha. Cool. So what typically happens, in your experience, if the customer isn't there to pick up the food?
That's pretty rare, but there is a process by which to go through it. If you knock on the door, and you don't get any answer, again, there's a process within the app where you can say, customer, I haven't been able to reach my customer. You'll start a timer, and you'll need to wait for approximately, they gave you about a 5-minute timer that you'll need to wait, at their door or the destination. And during that time, usually then I'll start calling, and I'll retext, again. If I can't get through to the customer, my instructions are to, simply put the food down there at the front door, text the customer a final time, or call a final time, and then consider myself complete. Again, typically it's someone that is on a phone, who's still inside. They're on a phone call, or they've gone to the other room and they don't hear me knocking. And so typically, within that 5-minute timer, I will find the person. It's pretty rare that someone's all of a sudden suddenly a no-show. I have done dashing, real late at night, where I think people have actually fallen asleep. But typically the order gets to the person.
Got it.
I'm guilty of that. I think I've done that once.
Yeah.
So, now let's go to the juicy stuff, payouts and getting paid, and how much you can make. What are some of the best nights to make the most money, and, under normal circumstances, what can you expect?
Sure. I don't know, after, I get through what I say, I don't know if you're going to call it juicy anymore. It's pretty straightforward. Again, when there are no barriers of entry for, the labor to start, working on something, you're not going to have enormous payouts. However, consistently, and again, all markets are different, but, my expectations are that, and I've made consistently roughly $20 an hour, again, gross, as an independent contractor, um, per hour working, typical times like lunches, dinners, certain weekends, etc. There are others who, they'll make more money over the course of the week, but their average pay is going to decrease on an hourly basis. Again, I'm working 15 to 20 hours. If someone's working 40 hours, hours 21 to 40 are going to be a lot less lucrative than, the ones that pay out the best. And so someone might drop down to $15 an hour or $13 an hour. But if, obviously if you need that money, you're going to you're going to stick it out at, 3 o'clock on a weekday afternoon when, orders are, almost non-existent. So, however, if you are working, a modest number of hours a week, again, for me, I'm trying to make about $20 an hour. In my experience and with, the dashing spreadsheet that I've kept for all this time, Sunday is typically the best night of the week. Followed, Monday is also, pretty good. Saturdays, and then as you progress through the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it kind of gets progressively slower until it starts back up again on the weekends.
Gotcha.
A couple of circumstances where orders are going to be better. Nights that I would actually look forward to dashing is when you're in bad weather, because no one wants to go out, but they may not want to cook. And during live events on television. And of course, on a common basis, that's, Sunday night football, local teams, certainly in playoffs, things like that. I made a lot of money during the Golden State Warriors, run the last 5 years, with all those playoff games, and they were so popular. Additionally, live events like the Grammys or the Oscars or, Game of Thrones several months ago, those are times when everyone, when people want to eat or certainly eat together, but they don't want to do it in the restaurant dining room.
Gotcha. So like during big TV events, you see.
Yep.
What about, this may be a dumb question only because, my wife, she goes out every Bachelor night to go watch The Bachelor, Bachelorette. Do you see a pickup on those kinds of days? Like on like weekly kind of TV show events?
If the television landscape was like it was, 30 years ago, as opposed to now, there just aren't enough, in a certain region, there just aren't enough people watching television at the same time as there were all that time ago. Because, again, if DoorDash was around 30 years ago, yeah, NBC must-see TV where everyone wants to watch Friends and Seinfeld and Frasier, at one time. I bet those would be very busy nights. But now, even with one of the most popular shows like The Bachelor, in my experience, it doesn't really register unless it's a major television watching event. Like the Grammys or the Oscars or, something like that. And of course, weather and football, but it's always football. Football is, I've listened to so many, I like the 49ers, but I've listened to every 49er game on the radio because I'm dashing because I know it's going to be a lucrative day.
Gotcha. So back to, earning potential, like how often are dashers paid?
Okay. So the dashing week runs from Monday through Sunday. And then for that week's earnings, you can, they'll pay you the following Tuesday. So, I dash on a Sunday night, I'll get paid through my, directly to my bank account on Tuesday, or for that full week, the following Tuesday. You can use an option like Fast Pay, where anything that you've earned over the course of that week, for a nominal fee, $1.50, $2, they'll put that money into your account within a half hour or so. And, there are a lot of dashers who dash based on need. I guess we all dash based on need unless it's a hobby. But, the people who have very immediate needs where they go, my rent, I'm $75 short on rent and rent is due tomorrow. I'm going to dash until I make $75, whether it's in 2 hours or 6 hours. Once I make that $75, I'm going to fast pay it out. Well, I have to make $77. Fast pay it out, get a net of 75. And so I can, pay my landlord, tomorrow.
Yeah.
So those are certain, that's a situation where someone might use FastPass.
Got it. That's really cool. Okay, cool. So, I'm sure, it really does depend, and it varies, based on location, number of orders, certain nights of the week or events. But, what is the average hourly rate that someone can expect as a dasher?
Again, it does fluctuate by day and sometimes by luck. You might get a run of, great orders on a certain night, or you might just hit a bunch of, it just might be kind of clunky. And so, again, if I go out from Sunday from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., which is pretty common, I hope to make, $80 or maybe a little bit more than that, on a Sunday, which is particularly good. If for some reason I'm dashing on a Thursday night, I might not make $20 an hour. I might make, $17.50 or $18, which is a little disappointing. But on a Thursday night, it's kind of not really outside the realm of possibility. And again, there are some nights where certain days where I made $40 an hour on rare occasions, and there's other times where it's down to $8-9 an hour. It's not a crapshoot, but there are deviations from it.
Yeah, and just like you've already mentioned, there's definitely ways to really go about it with a strong strategy. So one thing that actually came to mind was, does traffic get factored into earnings for dashers? So like the amount of time they're sitting in traffic, for example?
So maybe I should explain on a particular order. The way a dasher gets paid is there is, of course, the customer tip that they have, and then supposedly independent of that is the DoorDash base pay. And so DoorDash will always pay you at least a $2 base pay plus whatever the tip is. Tip might be zero, but they'll always pay you at least $2, and then over $2, is based on sort of the restaurant that you are delivering to. If it's typically a difficult restaurant to get in and out of, the parking situation, the distance, and other factors that play into it. DoorDash doesn't share what that algorithm is, but and sometimes it can be a little bit questionable or mysterious. But typically, if it's an order for more items that's going a longer distance, DoorDash will give you a larger base pay, and then customer tips are independent of that. By the way, tips can be, of course, in cash, which is pretty rare, and they can also tip after the fact, which you won't know when you accept an assignment. But you could, a few extra dollars could pop up in your app, and you'll get a notice for it sometime later. So forgive me if I've gone off track and
no, that helps. No, that's definitely very helpful. Thank you. Cool. So I guess to kind of just move on, what are some tips and tricks that you've seen over your time working with DoorDash, and some observations that you've made since becoming an active dasher back in 2015?
Yeah, well, again, as I was saying earlier, the technology has become, so much better. Obviously, DoorDash has a lot more sort of institutional experience and institutional knowledge now that, the dasher sort of experience on a shift-to-shift basis is going to maintain, pretty consistent. You're not going to have days where you're completely overwhelmed with orders, and there's going to be fewer days when you have, nothing going on. DoorDash, when I started, every order paid out $6 plus a customer tip, but you didn't know what that tip was until the end of your shift. And so I would go out for, say, I would have 10 deliveries, and I would know that I earned $60, but then I wouldn't know until I signed out And then it would tell me, oh, you made your basic $60, and now you've, made another 30 in tips. And so, sometime after the fact, I would understand how much I made that day. Now you can understand it in real time, and they break down, the DoorDash pay, the tips, etc. As I was saying before, I think it really helps if you're a dasher who's familiar with the area that you're dashing in. And it can be as easy as, this restaurant is on this side of the street, so I need to be in the correct lane, or, I need to it's easier to make a U-turn here as opposed to going all the way around, the mall or something. So the experience does, certainly help. And you can also, after a while, you also understand, restaurants that tend to be very, very good and organized, and there's other restaurants that don't always have their act together, and which might have longer waits. Even food, which I touched on a moment ago, if you're, there's certain restaurants, like a lot of Asian restaurants, have ramens and things like that, that they make a big, they make a lot of it at once, and they simply scoop it up and fulfill your order, by placing it in a cup or something. But if you're going to a pizza place, they don't cook 16, pepperoni pizzas at once. They roll through individually once they receive the order. And so if there's a problem, when you arrive at the restaurant, that you're going to be waiting 20 minutes for your order because, they don't cook it ahead of time. And so these are subtle things that dashers pick up over time to just have a better, dashing experience.
Got it. Gotcha. Cool. So I guess to kind of shift gears here and go into a little bit more about like dasher safety, and more specifically with the current times, like around coronavirus pandemic, and how can dashers really stay safe and sanitized during their shifts and during working with DoorDash right now?
Sure. I'm sure many of the viewers, are customers as well as, prospective or current dashers. So, I think they'll know that what's been common just in the last few weeks among many of the platforms is that you have what's called, no-touch delivery. And so typically what I've done in the past is, I'll go to a customer's door, and I will, open up the bag, and I'll hand, the food that's in a plastic bag or paper bag, to them, and wish them a nice day, and go on my way. Now what happens, and on some platforms it's required, but now you have a no contact delivery where you'll be in touch with someone. You can just simply place their food on their doorstep, knock on the door, ring the doorbell, and then go on your way. DoorDash has provided, they did offer all dashers some 3 2-ounce hand sanitizer containers, one, and 3 1-ounce hand sanitizer bottles, as well as gloves for dashers to have. And so, for a flat $5 postage fee, you could order, a certain number of these, to assist in your sort of, to keep your hands clean. Additionally, they have, restaurants, obviously the dining rooms are closed. And so there are different methods by which the restaurants will, provide their food to dashers. And that might mean that you wait, outside on the sidewalk, and they will bring their food out, to you, or you can, people, dashers, stand apart from one another while they're waiting for, food to be prepared, and then, to call the name out, to pick up an order. So people are managing as best they can. And, there's a little bit of variance in, how, individual restaurants and individual customers are, maintaining a safe distance.
Yeah, I'm sure. Oh, go ahead, Nate.
Do you know if DoorDash is still offering the sanitizer and glove option?
I received, I don't remember the date was notified. It came out, here in the Bay Area, we had shelter in place starting, they closed bars and restaurants on March 13th, I think. And it was right around that time where we were offered this opportunity to order through their online store these sanitization items. I don't know if they're, here on in early April. I don't know if those are still available, if they still have supplies, if they run out. But I did receive mine, and then ultimately I chose not to dash myself to remain
Right.
extremely safe to not dash. But I don't know if they're still available.
Okay. So the message for everybody listening here is reach out to the companies, because a lot of these companies are trying to offer ways for you to stay safe. I know Lyft said they were going to send out hand sanitizer, gloves, and masks and things like that, as they even look into developing a new delivery service to help Lyft drivers who have seen a decrease in rideshare demand. But reach out to the companies; they might be able to help you, and even if they aren't offering it, they may be able to tell you where to go to buy some.
Yeah, to be fair,
Yeah, please.
DoorDash, reached out to us. They have their own, Dasher, sort of not a secret store, but they have their own store for Dashers, and we were simply able to go through the cart, pick out what we wanted. They charged us $5 for postage, and then it arrived a couple of days later. And they're little bottles that say DoorDash on them, and it's 62% alcohol hand sanitizer.
Nice, perfect. Have you noticed a bit more generosity, or have you heard of a bit more generosity from customers on the tipping side during this whole thing?
Yeah. So, again, I don't have firsthand evidence of this because I've chosen not to dash. However, I do keep my ear to the ground with the @DashBridges, Twitter handle, and following the Facebook groups that I do. It's a really weird time. First of all, the supply and demand of dashers it appears to be really out of whack, where even if, people are, I don't know what the volume is in the demand from customer perspective, whether they're, scared to receive, food cooked by someone else, or if they're doing it more often, because they don't have other, they're not eating at work, etc. They're not going out to restaurants. But clearly there's been a huge surge in the number of dashers out there. And as far as I can see, the number of dashers has kind of flooded the labor side, and orders are getting, the payouts for orders are getting smaller and smaller. Something that used to be a $7, order, they might be offering, $3 or $4. And that's because, essentially sending out order assignments from DoorDash, it's kind of a reverse auction. And if they can send out an order and someone's going to pick it up for $4, someone's going to accept it for $4. They're not going to necessarily send out that same order, for $7, because they're, everyone's being squeezed during this time. So the point is, and the short answer is, you're seeing some orders where people are providing really huge tips, and you see people sending screenshots. This guy, I got tipped $100, and they said, "Thank you for providing this essential service." But generally, I see other reports of orders are terrible, no one's tipping. Other stories on the opposite end, and so it just seems like there's a huge disparity in whether someone is tipping noticeably larger, during this time, or people, maybe they're short on cash, these days, and they don't have money to tip, or they're trying to, keep their wallets as tight as possible. So it's really been all over the place, and you hear a lot of conflicting stories, as opposed to, during normal times, there's a certain amount of consistency that, that we see and that we expect.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. There is these platforms are seeing a flood of drivers, but for those of you that are out there that are looking to do this maybe for the first time, there are a few companies who are actually really looking for a lot more drivers. Instacart being one of them. I know they put out a public announcement that they're looking to hire almost 300,000 new Instacart shoppers across the country. So if you're looking into this, and you notice that your order volume on the food delivery side is a little low, look to doing grocery delivery, because I know there's a lot of demand. There's a lot of people out there who are looking to get their groceries delivered,
Right.
because they don't want to go to the stores and potentially, put themselves at risk.
Right. So there, obviously this crisis has moved certain, made other certain industries, quite a bit busier as opposed to, most others are slowing down. Of course, Instacart is one of them. I did
Mm-hmm.
try Instacart. First of all, it makes for good fodder for articles to try a variety of different, platforms. And so I
Mm-hmm.
did try Instacart for a month or so, a year or two ago. And I will say it's more mentally taxing than driving DoorDash, because Instacart orders are they might be simply, pick up pre-bagged groceries, and simply
Right.
it's closer to food delivery. And, I'm getting off on a tangent a little bit, but DoorDash will have orders from Walmart or from Safeway, et cetera, where you simply pick up the previously completed orders, and you simply, deliver them as if you would deliver a meal. I guess you're delivering like 30 meals. And then Instacart, a lot of times you'll have a list of items, and you're walking through a supermarket, picking up those items. And so, if you're trying to find non-fat, a certain type of extra spicy balsamic vinegar or something like that, the mental challenge of trying to find these things in a supermarket can be very challenging. And for me, who, I cooked some very modest and, boring meals, it's difficult to find like spices, or to find,
Mm-hmm.
different types of yogurts and things like that. But, obviously it's a job, and it's, it keeps you moving too, because DoorDash can be, you can kind of go on autopilot and do a lot of DoorDash.
Right.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Cool. Well, thanks. And to kind of wrap things up, is there anything else you wanted to add today, and let our audience know, to anyone considering or maybe getting started with DoorDash for the first time?
Don't do what I did on my very first order. And I remember it very clearly. I, picked up food at a restaurant, and I knocked on this woman's apartment door, and, she opened it, and I said, "Hey, I'm Mark. I'm here at DoorDash." And I proceeded to walk into her apartment, and set it on her kitchen counter. And, she looked at me like I had three heads. And I didn't realize until after that it's like, no, you just hand the food to the person at the door, and they'll take it from there, and then you go on your way. You don't, walk into someone's house like that. So that was
Yeah.
that was the only time, and it was on my very first order. So I would advise against that.
Okay.
I would, and on a little bit of a different tangent, remember, we are independent contractors, and when we make a certain amount of money, when we're paid each week, taxes are not taken out. And so everyone's tax situation is a little bit different, but DoorDash will provide you with a 1099 at the end of your tax year. You should, again, depending on your tax situation, you should put out a Schedule A, and you need to hold some money back. If you think you're going to owe the government at the end of the year, you need to remember to hold on to that money, a certain amount of it, because, ultimately, the government will find you to pay your taxes. So that is something to consider.
Yep.
And I'm actually really glad you mentioned that, because I want to let everybody know we're not experts on the subject, but if you've been driving for a food delivery service or rideshare since February, there's a chance you might be eligible for the paycheck relief program that was put out by the federal government. So call your bank if you need any kind of resources there, and they'll be able to help you understand better what you can do there.
For sure. Yeah, that situation is fluid. I have not, tried to, sign up for unemployment. I don't know if I'm eligible. I don't know the exact rules, but it's something that I will be looking at, very, shortly.
Yeah, so for unemployment, I don't know if you'll be able to qualify as an independent contractor. Typically not, but
Right.
with the in that $2 trillion stimulus plan, they have the it's called the Payroll Relief Program, something like that. And independent contractors and 1099 employees uh, are one of the groups that are potentially eligible to receive a loan.
Yeah, and I think it'll become clearer. Again, I see that in the Facebook groups where
Mm-hmm.
people are asking if they're eligible or if they're not, or if they've tried, and I think it'll become clearer over the next, hopefully over the next several days or weeks, whether Dashers, Postmaters, etc., can find some relief that way.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Well, thanks
Wonderful.
again for
Well,
joining
Mark,
us
thank you
today,
so
Mark.
much. Provided some great information.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Perfect. And
Awesome.
for all of our listeners out there, if you're interested in becoming a DoorDasher, feel free to visit hirecar.com/services. You can scroll down and select DoorDash to get signed up today.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. And join us next time for another episode of Mobility Revolution. We'll actually be talking with Harry Campbell, the rideshare guy.
He's my boss.
We'll put in a good word for you, Mark.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
Thanks,
Awesome.
guys. I
Thanks,
really
Mark.
appreciate it.
Thank you.